Hello, everybody. So sorry we're running a little bit late. We had a few little technical issues. Welcome to this webinar on interviewing techniques. Here with me again today, I have Di Pierce. Welcome, Di.
Hi Sarah, how are you today? And good afternoon. Oh, happy Monday to everyone. It's I'm going into holiday mode. It's nearly Easter, and I'm sure you're all doing the same. Only got a 4-day week.
Two 4-day weeks.
2 4-day weeks. How exciting. So today we're going to talk about interview techniques and making things really happen when you go for an interview. So we've in our previous webinars we've talked about getting your resume right. Now you've been shortlisted and you're going for that interview. So let's look at the things we need to cover. So hopefully by the end of today, you will be able to prepare effectively for an interview, making sure you're getting everything ready. Present yourself well at an interview. So this is going to look at you actually presenting by answering the questions, but also presenting yourself physically in the appropriate manner for the type of job you're going for. Understand the difference between the standard behavioural and the situational interview questions, how to respond to questions, and prepare questions to ask and wrap up the interview. So let's look at it. So for preparation for the interview, I suppose the first thing you need to do is confirm the actual details of the interview, the name of the interviewer, the location, the time, and a contact phone number. And I know that you get excited when you get an interview, and it might be on the fly, and we take down notes, and we don't take down clear notes. So to make sure that we just doubly confirm. So we're going to see you at Joe Smith at 10 o'clock on Wednesday, the whatever it is, and your address is this, and ask for a contact number in the event that there's some kind of hiccup on the way. Now, normally most organisations should send you a confirmation of that interview. However, there's some that still don't do it. The next part, so it's up to you to be proactive and make sure you double check things. The next thing is to go and do some really good research into that organisation. Find out a bit more about who they are, how many employees they've got, maybe find out who the CEO is, work out if they are, Victoria-based or Australian-based, global, and get a bit of a feel about who they are. Now, most times you will be asked about what you know about the organisation, so make sure you've got some information, but you don't need to give them every single detail that you find on the website. Website. The other thing is just quickly go over your resume again. Make sure that you've got everything there. Just refresh yourself around some of your capabilities and your expertise. And particularly if you've had someone else write your resume, you need to make sure you go through it. The other thing is also review the job specification. So go back onto that job specification and look at the criteria that that is required, and review those aspects. So then you can start thinking about some questions that you may be wanting to ask, or you'll be able to respond to. The other thing is that you need to research the average remuneration for this type of role. So I'd be jumping on Seek and having a look and finding out what the average rate is. Also go onto the Hayes salary guide, and you can download that from their website, and that will give you an idea of the pay scale. And also practice responses to questions, which we're going to go into shortly.
Di, before you go on, I just was wondering with the researching the organisation, so really that's just to be showing that you're interested? Like,
Absolutely.
Can it be a little bit creepy if you're doing kind of weird research?
No.
And like the name of all the organisations, or is it just around like the mission and the values and the
it is about mission and values, but they want to know that you've actually looked into their organisation to see that it's going to perhaps be the right fit about it, but you need to know something a bit more about what the organisation does, and maybe where they're wanting to head, but get an idea, because they always say, "What do you know about my company?" Well, I know it's a global organisation. It started in the USA, or it started here in Victoria or something like that, and you've got about 5,000 employees or something. Just keep it sort of simple, but show that you've actually done the research into the company.
Okay.
All right. At any time, anybody can ask questions. So the next thing is, and I know you're going to think this is a little funny, but you've got to make the winning impression. So you need to show your personality through your appearance, but temper it down. Okay, so because people want to see who you really are. So often if you go into an interview and you put on the dark suit and look, have that sort of bland look about you, they can't really tell who you are. But we just don't want to be over the top. So make sure you keep your outfit simple. This is for guys and girls, for everybody. Keep it simple. No flashy jewelry. You can wear jewelry, but no flashy ones. No strappy sandals. Make sure that you wear clean and preferably covered in shoes or boots. No, guys and girls, no mini skirts.
Especially
guys. Oh, as long as you shave your legs, it's fine. But make sure that don't wear really short skirts. This is not that. If you're going to wear a shorter skirt, make sure it's just above the knee. As they used to say to me when I was at boarding school, no more than a hand above the knee. Otherwise, it's inappropriate. Make sure your outfit is clean. So whatever clothes that you're wearing, make sure they're clean and ironed or steamed. Don't show too much flesh. So, just don't show it all. Soft makeup. There's kind of a female line here, isn't there?
Well, I think guys might have it a little bit easier in terms of.
I think they do.
Wear a suit.
Yeah, wear a suit. But soft makeup. If you're wearing makeup, make sure it's soft. It's not like you're going to a nightclub. And make sure that you wear a deodorant and a light fragrance. So we don't want to, and this is for guys as well, particularly, we don't want to overpower our future employer with a really strong fragrance, because some people get allergies to them, and it can be really disconcerting. So just make sure that whatever fragrance that you're wearing is subtle. If you wear glasses, make sure they're clean.
Okay.
I know it sounds crazy. And make sure that your hair is clean, tidy, and for those people who have hair colour, make sure that your colour has been updated and the roots are done. We don't like seeing...
Unless it's in fashion.
Unless it's a fashion item, but if, we don't want to see a whole lot of regrowth area. So, because that says something about you. So make sure that those areas are all sorted out.
So, Dido, in terms of, times are changing and there's a real emphasis now on workplace diversity. And so, I mean, if you have things like tattoos and piercings and hair color and that kind of thing, I mean, you don't want to hide it, do you? Because that's who you are.
No, but you need to be appropriate to the workplace. So if you were going into, say, one of the big professional organisations, might be like the KPMGs or things like that, you wouldn't be going in with a whole lot of nose piercings and things like that, because that's not really appropriate for their culture. Right? Okay. Everybody has tattoos these days. We just don't blatantly sort of show them around when you're going for an interview. Okay. And I think most people now are pretty subtle about, at interview time, sort of keeping them a little bit more covered, or you can't cover the ones if you've got them on your hands. But it's about presenting yourself well. Everybody does, so many people do have tattoos, people do have piercings, but, you just need to think about it and go, am I making the best impression?
And I guess then on the flip side of that, you don't then hide everything for the interview and then come to work and be like,
yeah. But, if you've got 10 face, rings in your face, well, I'll be pulling quite a few of them out and just having a couple. You know what I mean? It's just like we don't want to have focal points that they just get obsessed with that.
Yeah.
But again, it also depends on the type of job that you're going for.
Yeah.
And what would be appropriate in that kind of setting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's why it's also good to research the organisation, because you get a feel of who they are.
Yeah.
If it's a young, funky, creative kind of place, it's not going to make a difference. But if it's in a legal firm, it could make a difference.
Yeah. Okay.
Or if it's in a hospital, that would make a difference, because having piercings and things, there's a whole issue around that. So just be mindful of those things. So I'm going to show you a couple of little outfits. So depending on if you're going into a formal workplace and you need to wear formal gear, you can see here on the slide, there's a couple of variations or a couple of versions. You can see it's quite bland, but you can show your colours, you can accessorize and things like that, but it's just not over the top. The second one is for a more casual one. So this is really where it shows your flair and who you are. Again, you can wear flats to those kind of things, but just understand your culture of the organisation that you're going into, that you're not either too overdressed or too underdressed.
Yep.
For the situation. Any questions about presenting yourself that you want to ask? No questions. Let's move on. So now let's get to the interview. So we've got ourselves all dressed up, all ready to go. So I would be getting on Google or Waze or whatever maps you have got online, and research the location and make sure you plan for traffic events. So make sure you work out the best way to go, one that's not going to get caught up in traffic.
Where you can park.
All of those kind of things. So make sure you plan for that. And whatever time frame it says, add on at least 10 to 15 minutes, at least. Because if you are in Melbourne, we know that can be pretty crazy. In Sydney, Brisbane, anywhere really, we can have traffic hiccups. I sort of plan to leave. I like to plan to arrive at the location like an hour before. So I would plan my trip. They say it took half an hour to get there. I'd add on an extra 10 minutes. Still would keep me there 30 minutes earlier. And I just think there's nothing worse than if you are in a rush. Gives you time to get that car parking, go off and have coffee, go and have something, but please don't have a cigarette, because what will happen is that you're going to have your nervous cigarette and then you'll be really stinky. So that'll be first impressions that they will make a judgment about you on that. For those who wear lipstick, make sure you refresh it before you go in and check there's no food in your teeth. And also have a breath freshener. Make sure you go to reception about 5 to 10 minutes earlier.
And not more than that. Really.
Oh God, no! Don't arrive.
Don't arrive, and then sit there and awkwardly watch everyone come in.
If necessary, sit in your car or go and sit somewhere and play on your iPhone. Beforehand.
Okay.
Once you get into reception, don't introduce yourself to the receptionist. Say who you are and ask to speak to the person who's going to be interviewing you using their full name, like Mary Smith. And when you're waiting in the reception area, don't use your phone, and make sure that you turn it off at that point. So it's almost like you sit down at reception, maybe pull out your phone and purposely turn it off and then put it away. They don't want to, because the receptionist is the eyes of the organisation, and whoever's on reception will be doing full-on reporting of your activity prior to the interview, back to the interviewer. And it will be simple things. They'll go, oh, what was that person like? Oh, I don't really know. They just sat there and they played on their phone all the time. So it could even be an opportunity just to make some mild, interaction with the receptionist. Nice day. Bring up the weather, bring up the footy, bring up the cricket, bring up something, motor racing, whatever. Just have a casual chat. Now, when your interviewer arrives, get up off your bottoms, stand up, introduce yourselves, look at them in the eye, and give them a firm handshake. And don't forget to smile. Now, when I say firm handshake, I mean that's firm. It's not cutting off their blood circulation. This is not a power game. It's about showing that you are, you're a strong person, but you're not a wrestler.
And there's nothing worse than a bad handshake.
No.
Than a weak, soft, floppy handshake.
A weak, soft, can't stand that. So practice your handshakes with someone, but please don't do that power thing and try to break off their blood circulation, because
nobody's going to be impressed.
No, an interviewer will look at it and go, oh, here we go, here's a power, this one's trying to play power games with me. All right, okay. So any questions on the preparation? No. So there are 3 types of questions that you're going to be asked in your interview. One will be a series of standard questions, then you'll get some behavioural, and then you'll get some situational questions. Now, your standard questions are going to be simple things like, tell me about yourself, and why do you want to work here? So again, this comes back to the research that you would have done. What do you know about us? There are 2 questions in here that you will always be asked, and one is, what are your strengths? What are you good at? And the next one is, what are your greatest weaknesses, or what are your weaknesses? And you must come up with some weaknesses. At least one. So if you can't answer what your strengths and weaknesses are, it shows that you're not self-aware, that you haven't really researched into yourself, you're not confident about yourself. Everybody should be able to brush off and say, you know what my greatest strengths are? My greatest strengths are actually communicating with people, attention to detail, putting out bushfires, whatever it is.
And really, they should be aligning to what was in the ad, if possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then what are your weaknesses? Oh, well, my weaknesses are, and I'll always say to you, if anybody, my weaknesses are all around budgets and finances and things like that, because that's my pet hate, and I'm not really good at it, and that's why I have an accountant. But so it's understanding what are the areas that are your strengths and weaknesses. So if really focus on your strengths and talk about those, but with your weaknesses, once you've disclosed what they are, then talk about what you're doing about developing those weaknesses. So sometimes some people's weaknesses can be like, I don't like to fail. But what I'm trying to do around that is accept that it's okay to fail, and what I learn from my mistakes or my failures actually makes me stronger. Or I'm a control freak, and I'm practicing letting go and getting other people to stand up and be accountable. So just think about what those weaknesses are.
So I mean, I guess you'd want to be careful. Like, you wouldn't want to say something silly like, my biggest weakness is that I just work too hard, or I work too long, or I take on too much.
Yeah, because then they're going to cost them for work cover.
Also, you don't want to say something like, I'm really bad in the team.
No. Because I'm allowed about it. A big one for a lot of people.
Yeah.
If communication's not, look, I find it challenging communicating to large groups, but I'm putting myself out there. This is what I've tried to do. So they're the kind of things that you need to focus on.
Oh, we've lost audio apparently.
Gone. Are we back on? Are you okay? Are you all okay now? Yes. Yeah, we're on. Yeah. Okay, we're okay now. We're okay now. Yep, beautiful. Thank you. Now, the other one is that they will ask you about your achievements, so make sure you brush up on your resume and look at the things that you've done well in relation to that job that you're going for.
I think this one's a really important one as well. I mean, you don't want to sound contrived and like you're making it up, but if you do look at the job that's up for, that you're going interviewing for, I'm sure we can all find something within that arena that we have done really well. And I think that you should be honest and confident in what you know and what you're good at. I think that shows a lot of strength of character, and that, you know, I think that can be very impressive.
Yeah, and the thing is that an employer wants to know how well you've done something. An employer has seen on your resume, you should have put on your resume achievements anyway, but now they want to talk to you about it. They don't, you know, they all look at the attributes and, you know, your qualifications and go, okay, this ticks the box. But what they're really wanting to know is, okay, you've got the theory behind you, you know what to do, but let's see how well you do it. And let's see what your behaviour's like, and let's see you in different situations.
Yeah.
So we want now to make the resume like that living document.
And you'd also want to know that it's for real. You know, we can all write something down, but if I was asking that kind of question, then I would be following it up with a lot of questions just to see that, oh yeah, no, this is actually a real life experience they've had, and
That's
I
right.
definitely believe what they're telling me right now.
That's right, because I think they're also proving that you know about your resume. And talking about situations that you've cited on your resume. That's why I say that if someone else has written it for you, double check it.
Yep.
Now, they will ask you about difficult situations that you've faced. So think about those difficult situations. We all have difficult situations. What did you like or dislike about your last role? Be open and candid, but never, ever bag the organisation. So why did you want to leave your current employer? This is a really important one. You can say, if it's not the right cultural fit for you, you can say, look, you know, it worked out really well, but just sort of from a cultural perspective, it's not really fitting, or it may not align. For some people, their values may not be aligning anymore.
Yep.
And that's okay. Never, ever, ever criticise anybody at your current workplace or the organisation. The moment you do that, they will drop the pen and you'll be on your way and you won't get a job. So talk really positively, you know, about the positive reasons, you know, why you're going, you know, I want to change. I want a change of career. It's time for me. I'm starting to get stale. I need to move on. There's no room for development. If you are leaving because of your current manager, who you may not communicate very well with, you again don't go and say, well, my manager was just an absolute, you know, I can't say this on the webinar, but whatever it is, you know.
I think we all know.
You all know what I'm talking about. If you just need to say, look, you know, my manager and I just got to the point where we weren't communicating really effectively, and it wasn't really good for either of us, and I just thought it was time to go.
Yeah.
Time to move on. So it's highlighted the fact that you had an issue. They can then ask you about that, but sometimes it simply can be that, you know, your manager didn't direct you very well and you need more direction, or the manager, you know, I kind of felt that my manager was quite a micromanager. And I've kind of got to the point now that I don't need micromanaging, whatever it is, but don't ever criticise them. They will ask you about what your goals are for the future. You don't have to tell them that in 5 years' time you want to be the CEO, but talk to them honestly about this. You know, some people might be at a point in their lives where they want to get a job, but they don't want to progress up into management. They don't want to progress into being an executive. They don't want to do that. They want to go to work and do their job and do a really good job.
Yep.
And if that's where you're at, and if that's the type of job that you're applying for, just be candid about it.
Yep.
Okay. I actually heard an example recently of someone applying for a job in a quite a well-known organisation, and all they talked about in that interview is where they wanted to go in the organisation, and the feedback that came back about it was there was about 3 applicants who did it. They just wanted to get into the organisation, so they were prepared to do anything just to get into that organisation with the intent of moving into the position they really, really wanted. Okay. So they kept focusing on where they wanted to be.
Yeah.
And instead of genuinely applying for that role, to stay in that role for a reasonable amount of time, they looked at it and thought, I just want to get my foot in the door of this organisation, and then I'm going to move myself around and get to where I wanted to go. Well, that's not good either.
Yeah.
Because if they're recruiting for a role, they want some kind of stability in that role.
Of course.
They don't want someone to come in and 3 months later be tapping on the door saying, I want to move into another department. I wanted to move into another department. So be really mindful and think about that from an organisational point of view. All right.
Skipped all your pages there. What about also if I heard an example of someone who was looking for a pretty low level, the job advertised as a pretty low level administration role, and an applicant came in and said, look, I just want to work for an organisation and I can stay there until I retire. I just want a position that I can stay in until I retire.
And did they have more senior position?
Their resume was very impressive.
Yeah, but
they just wanted to stay in this fairly low level role that's stable and until they can.
Yep, and you're going to get a lot of that now. You're going to get a lot of people who have been, as I say, flying up in the corporate area, high level area, and then they want to step back and just go to work.
They just want to cruise on.
They want to cruise. The thing is, and I really think this is going to happen more and more and more, because there's a lot of baby boomers now who are sort of cutting out of those high level roles, and they just want to go and get a fairly basic role. The thing is that sometimes they get fear factor that they might move on because they'll get bored. They haven't got the stimulation that they're going to have, and that is probably the greatest risk. It would then be up to the interviewer to ask a lot of extra questions around that, about where they really want to go. But if that's what they want, then that's what they want. But they should have also highlighted that into their cover letter right from the very start to say, look, I've been in the corporate world, now I want to step back.
So there's a question here around how much would you divulge about yourself, referring to question 1. So family, hobbies, work history.
I wouldn't. I would just, if they just ask you about your work history.
Maybe if someone says, Di, tell me about you.
I wouldn't go too much into even family or hobbies. This is about work, really.
Okay.
Yeah. So the thing is, if you tell them too much about your family, you say, well, I'm married.
I have 11 children.
I have 11 children, or I'm a single mum. They'll go, they can make judgments about you, which they shouldn't do because that's illegal.
Yeah.
But it just can create biases, and they'll think, oh, well, how's that person going to get to work? And, oh, that's going to be a challenge because they've got school holidays and all of this. So even though legally they shouldn't be making judgment on that, you can still open yourself up for judgment around it. If someone comes in who doesn't have this and doesn't have that, then they would be a preferred candidate because there's going to be less complications around it. So don't tell them too much about that. I would do an overall work history that just talks about the types of roles that you've been in and how they've led into each other. But I wouldn't be going into any huge detail around it, more so around your current role, which is more related to the role that you're applying for.
Okay.
So let's look at, so are you going to say something, Sarah? So let's look at the behavioural interview questions, okay? So these behavioural, so we have our standard interview questions and then we have behaviour. Behavioural interview questions are asking you and trying to find out how you would respond to something, or no, how you have responded, I should say. So we need real live situations here. This is not about theory, this is about real. So, and they might say, tell me about how you've worked effectively under pressure. So what you would do then is you would then give an example of when I was under pressure and how and what I did and what was the outcome of that. So they'll want to talk about that. Well, you know, at the because I'm in finance, at the end of the financial year, that is a really, really pressurized time. And what I do is I actually prepare myself for that, knowing that this particular period is going to come up and it's going to be 8 weeks of really hard work. I make sure that I keep fit, I make sure I keep healthy, I prepare myself for it because I know it's going to be for this period of time. So they want to know how you handle pressure, you know, how you handle challenges. They will ask you, have you ever made a mistake? And how did you handle it? So describe a time that you made a mistake, because that's what they want to know.
So Di, in this instance, I mean, everybody gets a bit nervous. Everyone's got a lot on going in their brain. What happens if you just have a complete brain fade and you're like, of course I've been under pressure and of course I've made mistakes and of course I set goals, but you just cannot think because for whatever reason your brain has stopped working.
Because you're nervous.
Yeah.
Do you know what to say? Quite simply that I have just got a brain freeze. Give me a minute. And you will come up with something. But hey, be honest with these people. These people are human. They know that you're going to be stressed. They know that you're going to be nervous.
And I guess you can, in your preparation work, if you were interviewing, there are things that you would want to know about prioritizing.
Yep.
When you've had to have a difficult conversation with a client or customer. So potentially you could go through your memory banks then when you're a little bit more relaxed, or practice with a friend or spouse or something, so that then you've got some in your
memory
in reserve.
That's right. And just think about it. Look, in honesty, they'll ask you about pressure. They'll ask you about mistakes. They will ask you about challenging situations. They will ask you things around, you know, explain a time when you've disagreed with someone at work, or there was something that compromised your values or wasn't ethical. They will talk about maybe ask you about a difficult situation that you've had with a team member.
I would definitely ask about conflicting priorities from different areas of the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like how you would deal with that.
Yeah. How would you say to someone, no, I'm not doing it for you, in a nice, polite manner?
Yep.
So they will ask you those questions. If you go onto the famous Mr. Google it, you can look up behavioural interview questions for particular jobs.
Yeah.
So if it's in the health industry, if it's in any kind of other industrial areas or the corporate area, you can go on there and it can, and even for specific roles, it will ask you the types of behaviour. Look up the type of behavioural questions that they would probably ask you.
Yeah.
So then you can just go think of real life experiences.
And I think it's important to note here, it's not about making it up or cheating or getting the answers, but it's about getting the best out of the situation. And if you've only got 10 or 15 minutes, and if you are prone to being quite nervous, I think you should do everything you can to be putting your best foot forward and giving yourself the best representation in that moment. And which could just be practicing or rehearsing.
That's right. And just think about the types of things. Think of circumstances, what they want. For some people who haven't been in the working industry for a long, long time, relate it back to school. Or you can even use personal experiences. What they want to see is how you go about those types of situations.
Yep.
How do you behave in these situations?
Okay.
Not about what you would do, but how you would behave.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so they're behavioural. Now, the next type of questions they will ask you are situational questions. So this is where you would give more of a theoretical perspective on things.
Mm-hmm.
So it would say, like the first one, how would you resolve a conflict between employees within your team? So that would be, well, first of all, I would probably go to our policies and procedures and look at our conflict resolution process.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would actually sit down and have a conversation with them, or I'd do the investigation. But this is around almost like adhering to policies and procedures and showing that you are doing things the correct way.
Mm-hmm.
How would you go building a relationship with a senior staff member that you felt disconnected from? I'd go and ask them if I could have a cup of coffee or whatever you would do in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So these are often like scenario situations, and what that's asking you or highlighting to you is these are things that could potentially happen at your work.
Mm-hmm.
These are situations that could potentially happen at your work, and they want to know how you're going to manage it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in a nutshell, there are 3 types of questions: your standard questions, your behavioural, and your situational. At the moment, the stronger focus is on the behavioural interviews, behavioural interview questions. Standardly, you probably get 5 of each. If they do all 3.
Mm-hmm.
It all depends on the organisation. Some of them are really comprehensive.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them you might just get 1 or 2. But by and large, they should be asking 5, 5, 5.
Okay.
And that would give you a really good all-round perspective of what that person's all about.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like then if you feel like you've mucked up in one, you can always redeem yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So how to respond to the questions? For your standard questions, be honest. Don't be creative. Don't tell any little flippers, as I call them. And use the KISS method. Keep it simple. We don't want to go into a whole lot of back detail. If you're talking about a situation, we don't want all the gloss on it. Just keep it simple. Your behavioural ones, use real examples and what we call the start or respond. Use the situation, the task you were doing, the action you took, and what was the result. Okay. And then situational, give the best practice theoretical responses.
Okay.
So look at, that's going into things like your policies and procedures, or go onto Google and say, what would be the best way to manage a conflict, and it will come up with a whole lot of tips. And they're the sort of things that you do for the theoretical, or even get smarter and actually describe the situation. So actually, I've had a situation like that, and this is what I did. So when they ask situational questions, if you've actually had a situation like that, then you would use that.
Yep. Okay.
So are there any questions about how to respond? Again, when you go into Google and you're looking at the specific questions, a lot of them will give answers, and what would be the types of answers that an employer would be looking for.
And so at this point, you might have 2 or 3 interviewers potentially. And at this point, you could just be talking to stony faces or tops of heads as they're writing notes. That can be quite off-putting.
Yeah.
To somebody. You just continue on as if they were making full eye contact and being friendly. And
look, tempted as you would be to say stop and focus on me.
Like, excuse me, are you listening?
Probably
very,
not
very
appropriate.
Answer.
They won't like that. Look, just continue on.
Yeah. Okay.
But you know what? If they are like that, I would be making a decision not to go and work there.
Right. Okay.
So you guys, you are also interviewing them.
Yep.
And you need to get a feel of what that organisation is like. So if you are in an interview and they've just got their heads down writing things and they're barely looking at you or not showing, and they've been stony faced, you need to look at that and go, well, is this the type of people I want to be working with.
Okay.
Because you also need to make sure that you've got the right synergy between the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
You need to feel comfortable with the people who are interviewing you to say, yeah, I really like these people. I've got this really great connection with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling good about this.
Yeah.
But if you're not getting anything, I'd be going, thanks, but no thanks. That's just me. But you need to think, what does that say about the organisation, the people you're working for? If that fits with you, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the other thing is we need to talk about is money.
I think you skipped one, didn't you?
Did I?
Yeah.
Oops. All right.
Yep. There you go.
Oh, sorry. I did skip one. I was getting really carried away here. So you also need to ask questions. So have a couple of good questions up your sleeve.
So when they say, do you have any questions?
And you go,
don't
yes.
say no.
Yep. And so here's some samples of questions. Can you describe the culture of this company?
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I always ask people, so that you have a set of policies and procedures, or you have your values written down. You have your values and your mission, I see here up on the wall. So how's that actually played out in the organisation? How is that demonstrated in the organisation? Because what I want to know, and the culture is really important to me, is that an organisation actually walks the talk.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that could be one, or you could look at ask where's the company going? What are some of the greatest opportunities that the company's got out there, or what are some of the challenges they're facing? Or you could even ask them, say, what do you like best about working for this company? Which is I think that's quite a nice one to ask.
Yeah.
What's the typical career path? Who do you think your competitor is? But, think about what's going to be important to you. What are some of the questions you should ask? I would be asking at least two fairly good ones, fairly juicy ones, and then there might be specifics about the actual role that you might want to ask about.
Okay.
But make sure you've got a couple prepared. Again, this gives you extra ticks for having good questions.
And so then I suppose this would be where you were just then around, let's talking about money.
Yeah.
That would be, so if you're saying what's the next step in the interview process, when will I find out, and then this would be where you would be not asking about money?
No.
Asking about money?
No.
No?
Never talk about money until...
What if they ask you? Oh, it's right
there.
there.
Right.
Read the slide.
Read the slide. So, okay, don't you go and ask about money. You should have researched it anyway and know what the averages are.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be asking them what it was, because then they'll think all she's after is the money. I would wait until they offer you a second interview or about to offer you a contract, because that's at the negotiating time. Okay. So don't ask them what the money is, because they go, oh, that's all. Yeah, if money's really, really important to you, let's step back a step. If money is really, really important to you and you have a certain criteria that you're not going to go below, I would have asked that question even before I went down the interview.
Yeah.
And I would have said to them when they have called up, and I would have said, what is the remuneration ballpark? Because this is a really important aspect to me. I don't expect them to give me the exact one, but they will at least give you a ballpark. And if it is in the ballpark, then you go for the interview. If it's way out of the ballpark, then you don't go for the interview.
Yeah, okay.
So you need to assume then that it's going to be around that, and everything is negotiable. If they ask you then, and some of them are a little bit cheeky, they may ask you and say, well, what are your salary expectations? And your response will be between the standard range of this and this. So you would have already done your research and said, look, I know that this role, according to Hayes, is their salary survey is between $65 and $75, $1,000, sorry, not just $75. So between $65,000 and $75,000 is, about the range. You know, I would be looking at the higher end of that if that was the case, but you're not locking it down. Okay.
Yep.
So it's always a tricky one, but I wouldn't even be. Usually, we talk money when they come in and offer you a position.
Okay. Perfect. Easy as.
Now, so at the end, once we've got through all that, stand up straight, thank the interviewers for their time, look them in the eye, and give each one of them a handshake and smile. And really just check off at the end and say that you're looking forward to hearing from them at the discussed time, because they would have already told you when they're going to get back to you.
Yep.
And do not use your mobile phone until you've left the building.
Okay.
Okay? If for any reason you're not successful, you ask for feedback so you can develop your interview skills for the next job.
Perfect.
So if you weren't successful, then they ring you up and say, look, I'm really, really sorry. You haven't been successful, and just ask them, so can you give me the reasons why I wasn't successful so I can improve for next time?
Perfect.
And our last one is really, so the keys are prepare yourself before you go for your interview. Present yourself well, respond to the questions, ask some questions, and then wrap it up.
Excellent. And I think it would be, I mean, the more you do, the better you get. But I think for some rehearsal time or some practicing with somebody we feel safe and comfortable with is not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. My daughter is in the hospitality industry, and last week she stepped out of her comfort zone to go into an industry that was quite different, but her skills were highly transferable. And she didn't get the job.
Mm-hmm.
And she interviewed quite well, and she relayed it all back and said, look, I can't give you this type of experience in this industry, but I can tell you what I can do and give you examples of my world as it is. And they really, really liked her. There were two other people who came in who had the industry experience, so they did get the job. However, they rang her back and said that they were going to forward it around, and they're actually going to promote her. The HR guy was going to promote her around the other departments to get her into the organisation for something that fits her role. And she turned around and she said, can you give me some feedback on my interview? And they said, oh, it went really well. And she said, I was so nervous. But she thanked him. She actually took the time. She said, I just want to thank you guys so much for considering me to come for an interview, even though I'm not working in the industry. It actually moved me out of my comfort zone to have that interview. And I have learnt so much from just coming from this interview. So that's where you can get that feedback. It's really, really valuable. And if you do get turned down, don't be cold on the other end of the phone. Say, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Can you give me some feedback? And be really positive. Because if you go, oh, thanks, and hang up on them, you'll never get a call back.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much again, Di, for taking us through interviewing techniques. And as always, if you have any particular questions or queries for Di, make sure you get in touch with us. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thanks, and next time we're actually doing interviewing from an employer's perspective.
Perfect.
All right, so anybody
stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Thanks,
All
Di.
the best. Bye.
Bye.